Hi, I'm Richard Ashworth. I'm going to talk to you about the sheep, the Chinese celestial animal. And you will probably reckon you're a sheep if you were born in 1943, 1955, 1967, 1979, 1991 or 2003. And you will be right that you're a sheep by the year, so it will tend to relate to what is obvious, physical, visible, and also to do with your deepest history, so to do with DNA patterns, family patterns, traditions, those kinds of things. If, however, you were born in the month of the sheep, you'd be entitled to call yourself a sheep in relation to the month, which would mean that the sheep qualities would relate to your education, to the work environment, to your peers, exes, contemporaries, that kind of thing. If you were born on a sheep day, for which you need a Chinese calendar, it would be more. You would be more particularly a sheep, very personally a sheep. It would tend to describe how you feel about yourself, who you think you are. And if you're born the sheep hour between 1 p.m. and 3 p.m. in the afternoon, that would relate to your dreams, your future, your deepest, most private thoughts. And going back to the day, who you are particularly is related to the day. So, what is a sheep? The sheep is idealistic, it's yin earth, not the top getter honour with others. The sheep needs to belong. If you want to understand sheep, you need to get that idea. Sheep needs to belong. The sheep is, in a sense, the sheep. That doesn't mean that the sheep is weak or dependent, but it does mean that its highest value is being part of things. Clubs and organizations and unions and so on, and the expanded family. Sheep understand family and care about it. So the balanced sheep has well-meant judgments about everybody, which can sometimes keep her stuck in first gear. And the sheep is the most sensitive, perhaps, only rivaled by the ox. The sheep is great at going into alpha rhythms. The sheep is a wonderful hypnotic or meditative subject, and the sheep is well advised to take a nap after lunch, because they'll tend to process their day in doing that. They're really good at going into that state between dreaming and praying, and sheep very often has a spiritual or religious agenda. You find sheep together with pig, for instance, some very interesting things. And the sheep of 1967, that's kind of the apotheosis of idealism. What the idea was that flowers and beads and free love were the answer to everything. Not such a bad idea. For the unbalanced sheep, July birthday and or mid-afternoon birth, which would mean 3 sheep, ambition and foolishness are pretty much the same thing. For the balanced one, say take Mick Jagger, Keith Richards of the Rolling Stones, Noel Gallagher of Oasis. I'm trying to script across generations here, something for everybody. However, leveraging affability for fame and fortune is second nature. They know how to do that, how to be popular, and they really, really want to belong. With the Rolling Stones, this is probably an explanation of why they're touring in their 80s, because they want to be relevant, not having made a decent album since Goat's Head Soup. Discuss. Anyway, the sheep is typically very keen to reflect the zeitgeist. See below for what the most unbalanced sheep do with this gift for belonging, because there's another side to sheep that I've been particularly exploring more recently. The balanced sheep, as well as being an expert judge of people, knows exactly what matters and is not easily diverted from it. The arrangement, for instance, that wood sheep Bruce Willis, his ex Demi Moore, and her ex and Bruce's fishing buddy Ashton Kutcher came to, whereby they stayed friends and the children avoided becoming conflicted, is not usual either in Hollywood or the world at large, but it is sheep behaviour. They can all change partners as often as the Jane Austen cotillion, but Bruce gets to see his kids. Bless him. Conversely, the value of caution and conservatism is often clear in sheep relationships. The most obvious of these is with the extrovert, spontaneous horse, whose sidekick the sheep often ends up being. So sheep is kind of, you know, carrier of drinks to the horse. With the sheep beside him, the horse's fun may be a little less riotous, but it also tend to stay out of serious trouble. So the young horse and sheep of 1978 and 79, for instance, were often a tag team who went out drinking and clubbing together. Not so young now, I guess. The sheep may stand back in amazement at the daring of the horse, but there is both to pick up the pieces and to take advantage when these risks. The sheep is there, both to pick up the pieces and to take advantage when these risks bear fruit. So that the horse charms and the sheep tags along. The horse dances on tables, the sheep ensures a soft landing. Horse and sheep of 1990 and 1991, respectively, are, by the way, a very different proposition. They are about to change the world. Watch them. This illustrates a psychological truth. The risk-taking the sheep shies away from is exactly what attracts them most. Many a desirable partner has rebounded from a horse only to find a lifelong proposition in the sheep. Read Marianne Faithfull's revealing autobiography if you want to see how this applied to the aforementioned Rolling Stones. Don't try this at home, kids. Marianne Faithfull, I feel like Charlie Watts best. I'm telling you. Charlie Watts. Placed as the sheep is before the monkey in the Chinese zodiac, they also understand monkey business. There is generally a certain wariness between these two as a team. They are unorthodox but magical, so they can work together, but it's a bit unstable. The sheep also forms a natural affiliation with the pig and the rabbit. This is their samhay or three harmony. They form wood between them, sheep, pig and rabbit. A very domestic alliance. The Chinese ideograph for a home is a pig under a roof, and the average rabbit would happily stay home 24/7 if allowed to. And the average pig would happily stay home 24/7 if allowed to as well. The rabbit is the diplomat and mixer, while the inherently versatile pig takes up the slack of whatever jobs they're there to perform. The sheep's part is to make things secure. She will have ensured, for instance, that there are no sworn enemies on the guest list. Sheep is an ideal social secretary as well as a resolver of conflict. Psychotherapy is among appropriate career paths because she knows how people think and she knows what they truly want, which, as we shall find, is a double-edged sword. Psychotherapy among appropriate career paths. And of course, this gift is one that can be abused. The sheep is passionate, representing the yin or feminine side of sexuality, and so whether male or female, the sheep is more seducer than chatting up. So it may seem strange to take the example of 1967 sheep Michael Gove, not obviously a professional seducer, but you can tell, I mean, he is the master of being interviewed and being very affable and saying nothing very much. Perhaps most interestingly, the sheep can form a formidable team with the dog, the dragon and the ox. This is the four earths, the four volts. Individually, each of these three is somewhat intimidating to her, but when this group gathers, her value becomes obvious. She can draw flexibility from the dog, and separately, dog and sheep are a breakup, they don't get on. Humility from the dragon, and cheerful cooperation from the autocratic ox. And the ox, of course, is the opposite of the sheep on the calendar, on the clock and on the compass. They do not get on. They're yin earth, so they tend to disagree in a yin kind of a way. It tends to be a bitchy kind of thing, if I'm allowed to use that term. So the ox ensures peace among the sheep, ensures peace among them. Even if all they do is make the coffee, the sheep is a comforter of the insecure. She understands that most barkers never bite and that aggression is simply inverted fear. In the Beatles, George was the sheep aspect, Lennon and Starr the dragons, and the ox was producer George Martin. So it's very interesting the way that these bands fit the astrological patterns. Perhaps the charge that Paul was a natural solo is accurate. He's a horse after all. A final word, the dark side of the sheep, which is something I've been looking at more recently, is to leverage gregariousness for power. I mean, typically the sheep is idealistic, family-loving, gentle, but there is this thing about needing to belong that can twist them. So Brazilian strongman Jair Bolsonaro, and I would tend to say that these strongmen are not strong men but weak men, looked at through the prism of the Tao, everything is its opposite, and someone so desperate to be tough suggests the reverse. So neither Jair Bolsonaro or Rupert Murdoch, probably the man who's done more damage to the planet than any other single human being, don't fit the pattern of the easygoing, idealistic sheep at all, but they love the herd to be on their side. They have to belong, sometimes even when that involves falsity and betrayal. Donald Trump was born on a sheep day, so as I was saying, your day pillar is the one that says most about you personally, makes his deepest quality the need for approval. And you can perhaps see the similarity between these three guys, Bolsonaro, Murdoch, Trump. This is not only the sheep's nature, but often their weakness. In this sense, they're not so much strong men, but weaklings, because their only strength is in the endorsement of the herd. It is a very fragile kind of strength. The sensitive sheep can feel what the crowd want to hear and give it to them. Populism is so much easier than conviction. So to give that a rounded view, the sheep has this need to belong, a gentle sensitivity, a certain idealism, but there is the possibility of those very positive qualities being perverted. So it's worth looking for sheep in a barzee in the month or the day to tell you about their work, the month or the day to tell you about who they really are. And I'm teaching this stuff all the time via Zoom, one-to-one, by mutual arrangement, and I'm doing barzees all the time. So these things tend to come out when I am doing those things. So pardon me if I've missed anything. Thank you.